welcome. Thank you for tuning in either live or on the replay. So today I am speaking to the spiritual body of the 5 bodies. This is the last one. So understanding these 5 bodies opens up to potential life mastery and a deeper sense and connection of self. So understanding of our spiritual body opens us up to infinite potential possibilities. And I mean, let's face it, what isn't possible without God on our side, right? Okay, so I say that with tongue in cheek. This of all the bodies is the one that I did not want to speak to for so many reasons. However, ultimately, I knew better than to leave it out, to have this system. You can't just have a section missing. It leaves a big gaping hole, and the remaining of the system ceases to function without it in there. So I'm nervous, but ultimately I think I'm actually more excited because this is such an edgy topic for me to be speaking to. Similarly to last week, the energy body, I am no expert or claim to have any mastery in this space. All I have is my intangible awareness that's been granted through my own personal experiences. So for those that have been following along, originally it was a 4-body system, and then as much as I didn't want to include the 5th, it had to come in. So if we revert back to when I first introduced the 4 bodies, I did a check-in and of my awareness, connection and comfortability to each of the, at the time, 4 bodies. Now the 5th is in, so I didn't actually do that check-in at the time. So my awareness, connection and comfortability to the spiritual body, I'm putting as a 3. Hence, me not wanting to speak to something that which I do not know all that well. Okay, but as I said, I can speak to my own experiences and the awarenesses that have been granted as a result of those experiences. Okay, so 3 out of 10. If you had asked me probably even as little as 2 to 3 years ago, no, maybe not, so maybe say 5, this would have been a 0. Okay, so as to gain some awareness and understanding of my journey, I was brought up in a Catholic family. I was largely educated in Catholic schools. Post school and leaving home, I really referred to myself as an atheist. So I had not granted any opportunity for the spiritual body to exist in my life. So now, I'm rating it as a 3 potentially. It could be higher, but I'll go into that. So now you could say, yes, I'm happy to say that I'm a spiritual being, and I'm open to exploring this body and developing my relationship with it further in whatever way that looks. That might be spending time in nature, that might be hugging trees, it might be praying in the ocean. Mostly for me, this body isn't so much as what I do, but who I'm being that embodies my connection to my spiritual self. So ultimately for me, where I am right now with that is being present in the moment to my heart and soul level connection. Periodically throughout the day, some days more than others. So God, universe, source, divine, creator, whatever word resonates with you. Even I now still have a lot of stuff that gets put up with the use of the word God. So I guess over the years, more recent years, I've referred to my God, I guess as the universe, saying, gee, the universe is taking me through my paces at the moment. Oh, wow, it's amazing what the universe is providing me at this point in time would be some of the languaging that I use. And I guess as the more I open myself to my spiritual body, the more less I am probably concerned about what terminology I'm using to express it, because ultimately it's such a deeply personal understanding and journey, and it's not for anyone's preconceived ideas about what words, or even what preconceived ideas I have with what words I'm going to use to express. And it would be it's not something that I talk to a great deal, again, hence nerves about doing this live in the first place. So I have had religious experiences, and I guess what I want to highlight is that religion is not necessarily a spiritual body. It might be the way that someone, or the vehicle that someone uses to connect with their spiritual body. Okay, religion is effectively giving us rules that govern our connection to the spiritual body, and that works for some, doesn't work for others, myself included. So ultimately it's about deciphering what is true and what resonates at a heart and soul level for ourselves, and ensuring that the ego, the identity, the personality level isn't necessarily driving the bus of that for ourselves. And again, that just depends wherever we are at. There's literally no judgment there, because we are where we are, and my journey is my journey, your journey is your journey. There can't, I think that's where religion does fall over, in that we have this ability to say, well, my God's the right God, you should be speaking to my God, well, whatever. Even me just joking about that feels really uncomfortable. The way that human history is played out hasn't really gone so well. I don't feel that it's really benefited many, that's for sure. So what is this spiritual body? Okay, so for me, it's the force that drives that which is out of our control. What is the force that allows for my heart to beat, for my organs to function? I'm not consciously telling them to do these things. What forces are at play that determines whether a baby is born or not born? The weather. I think I spoke to this in one of my lives late last year about determining, well, what is my business, other people's business, and God's business, which came from Byron Katie's work. My dreams. Okay, I don't decide what I'm going to dream each night. I do set intention before I go to sleep. I have a deep connection with divineness in through my dreams. It's enabled me to connect with loved ones who have passed over, or not just loved ones, and also deep healing work as well. Noticing the divine forces at play, so the synchronicities, the unexplained coincidences, things falling into place, the idea of divine timing, divine meetings, realizations, miracle healings. These are some of the beautiful things that I have had various experiences with, that has had me have to reconsider my perspective, particularly, there is no God, there is no bigger force at play, all the things. So it's really, it's making meaning of the things that happen that are outside of what we are able to achieve on our own. The more healing coaching work that I have done has given me glimpses into the knowing, into the energy of the God within, which, for someone that was coming from, having shut down the spiritual body entirely, that was quite miraculous, and had to force me to have to reconsider what is my relationship to God, to this spiritual body. If I've got a very real and alive sense of the God within, it's very hard to stay in a position of discounting that entirely. So as you can see, this is deeply personal, and it's not for anyone to tell anyone else, not me, absolutely, how this relationship with our spiritual body is to be. This idea of putting rules, and you can only connect with God, the universe, source, that energy, creator energy, it just seems ludicrous to me. So for me personally, no dogma. It's a no dogma space. There cannot be any rules, because first of all, as I just stated, the spiritual body is this invisible force. It's the aspect of things that I cannot control. I cannot force my heart to do anything. Okay, that's in God's hands. So it's a personal journey. Possibly it will consist of these things. Okay, prayer or intention. So little girl growing up learned how to say her prayers before going to bed, and then I shut that down post leaving home, coming into the coaching and healing space, been learning and being more intentional, so setting intentions as I start the day, before I go to sleep, as I commence something, like I set an intention before jumping on and doing a live. It's only actually very recently that I have opened myself to calling that in as a prayer. I attended a really interesting live just in the last fortnight, and the lady hosting that commenced with a prayer and invited us to sit with the hands in prayer pose, and that was deeply triggering. It brought on an immense amount of sadness that I had actually not prayed ever with that deep intention and deep connection to the intention. Okay, the prayers that I did as a child were very much tick a box, say these things, and tick the box that I have done my prayers. I am now a good girl. And so that was, even in itself, has created beautiful awareness. And through that, I'm like, okay, well, my intentions are effectively my prayers. Am I able to bring those two back together and bring in intentional prayer? Just something. Other characteristics of having a relationship with the spiritual body, again, may or may not consist of trust. Okay, trust that all is transpiring in our best soul level evolution and interest. Okay, so this has been a beautiful one that has probably been the one that I've been able to bring in with less awareness that this was actually me developing my spiritual body. Now that I'm analyzing, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So trust that all is transpiring. Okay, if things work out, great, then they're meant to happen. If things don't work out, great, they're not meant to happen. There might be some disappointment, there might be some processing of the attachment that I have to getting the things that I want, not having the things that I don't want, and then having those flip over. But ultimately trusting that even if I don't know the purpose of this working out or not working out, that it is in actual fact in my best interest at the soul's journey, the soul's evolution level. And that definitely makes being able to stomach that level of disappointment a whole lot easier. So having faith, actually believing in that force, you know. I said with the energy body last week, you know, that me learning about quantum physics has actually helped and supported me in being open and creating awareness of the things that are unseen, like the energy body, like the spiritual body. Okay, the intangible, having that real, and having faith that is a thing, that is a force at play in my life. Surrender. So, you know, surrendering and trusting and being okay with all the aspects of life that are outside of my control, of which there is so many. Providing hope that there is actually a reason for me being here. That, you know, we aren't just these cells, dense cell bodies interacting and just, you know, destroying the planet, or, you know, whatever way that we want to look at it. So, you know, hopeful that there is a bigger hand at play than perhaps what my little human brain can fathom. And also, you know, fulfilling the idea that I am here for a purpose, and that, you know, my life here in this body right now has meaning. And so, you know, prayer, intention, trust, faith, surrender, hope, purpose and meaning. These are some of the characteristics that I have identified that make up a large part of my spiritual body. Okay, religion has wrapped up a lot of these characteristics within structure and rules, and ultimately, again, personal choice as to whether or not this is beneficial to me or beneficial to you. So regardless of what vehicle we use to connect with our spiritual body, you know, for me, it's largely actually surrendering and trusting in my faith, in my hope, in that my life has purpose and meaning. And in that in itself is the relationship that I have developed thus far, because it's forever, ever evolving. So, you know, if you currently don't have a vehicle for connecting with your spiritual body, I would start with, what is your relationship to these characteristics? What is your relationship to intention, to prayer, to faith, to surrender, to hope, to purpose and meaning? And what if you were to intentionally cultivate these and bring the awareness of them into your life? What would having that give you? Okay, and again, that's a personal question. I know through what I have experienced thus far in my own spiritual body connection journey, it's granted me a lot of peace. It's granted me a lot of satisfaction. It's granted me a lot of pleasure and enjoyment and wonder and amazement of what has transpired as a result of being open to having these characteristics develop and enhance my life. There's also the aspect that I wanted to speak to, and that is finding balance of self-responsibility. So the idea of making things happen, I put it under the banner of performance coaching. Figure out what I want, set the goal, work out what has to happen to fulfill that goal, go out, do it, make it happen. Take the action to make that happen. Versus surrendering and letting life guide and reveal how this is to play out. Okay, so some examples of how that has really shown up in my life, and there are so many. So in 2001, my husband and I, we'd already decided that we were moving interstate, and we had started to put things into action to make that happen during, in the midst of COVID, in the midst of trying to leave Melbourne, where you had lockdowns, trying to get a house ready and prepared to put it on the market and then have it on the market. So we were doing all the things, taking the action to make that happen. Ultimately, though, there was so much that was outside of our control, whether lockdowns were on or off, whether we would get jobs where we were moving to, getting a rental, just so many ridiculous number of things that were outside of control. And what sort of effectively happened is we were taking action on the things that we could control, and everything that was outside of our control just kind of naturally fell in. That divine timing, the divine meetings, all of it just carried through so perfectly in a way that it was miraculous. I ended up coming up here to try and find a place to live and get some of my work contract details sorted, and that was in the midst of COVID, and I was supposed to be flying back to Melbourne to then pack my car, work my last few days in my old job, and then proceed to drive up here. However, due to lockdowns and all the like, and the government rules at the time, my husband said, don't come back. You're running the risk that if you come back to Victoria, you may not be able to leave, and you may not be able to get back to commence your job in I think I had like 3 or 4 weeks before I was starting. And so I had to then book an Airbnb the guy who was running the Airbnb had a friend who worked for a real estate agent who was able to help and provide some advice about our rental applications, and just everything. The house that we ended up renting was actually outside our budget and didn't accept dogs as part of the rental advertisement. I was really just going because it was at least in the location that I wanted. But as a result of me just rocking up to an inspection that I didn't believe that we qualified for, with the agent of the Airbnb host friend that they happened to work for, that I had started developing a relationship with, that all naturally fell into place, and so many other things. Yeah, there's a million other examples. I guess that's a nice recent one of the last few years of just everything just slotting in, and there were just so many things. I was actually in the end offered 2 jobs, and I accepted the one that seemed a bit more secure, and that worked out again perfectly because with COVID and things, that other job wouldn't have worked out. It also was a bit more riskier, and it was less pay, so it probably wouldn't have helped us secure the rental. So it just, all the flow-on effects that my little brain could not have comprehended or have controlled if in any way had I wanted to. So yeah, what I'm speaking to there is balancing, empowering myself and knowing that I can control various outcomes versus giving all my power over to this greater thing outside of myself. Finding that balance, okay? And again, that's not for me to say one way or the other. I do have thoughts around that, but it's not for me to speak to that. Pretty confident I've done videos on self-responsibility, so it would actually be really interesting to go back and look at those. But ultimately, it's like, is my vehicle, is my relationship with my spiritual body supportive of me having the life that I want, whilst also making peace with reality? So the things that I can't control, can I find peace in my heart and be open to me not necessarily understanding why things are the way they are, even though I can see that they're not necessarily, well, from my perspective, beneficial. Yeah. The next point is to be humble in the pursuit. And I can put my hand up and say that I have not always been that. Be humble in the pursuit. It's very easy to develop a spiritual ego that, even though we think we're not being dogmatic, but if we're judging everyone through the eyes of, well, I have this knowing, I have this understanding, this connection that everyone else should have, then really am I any better than these dogmatic religious institutions? And also acknowledging myself through that journey, and we only do what we know. So when we know better, we do better. So I'm grateful to have been deeply humbled, and brought into that place, and not still in that spiritual ego aspect. Humble and also gracious for the provision of this life, of my heart, of this body that has been gifted to me by this greater force at play. I haven't consciously chosen this. So, be real. Where can I find gratitude? Where can I have graciousness, for the manna, for all of the beautiful things that have been provided to me in this lifetime. Also, having the knowing that when that manna, when the provision isn't provided, so let's just say the move interstate hadn't happened, and there would have been a great sense of disappointment and sadness, and I'd probably be quite pissed off, particularly now that I now get to enjoy the benefits of being where I want to live. Had that not worked out though, actually knowing again that everything is transpiring for my greater evolution, and settling into and accepting that, so even when things don't work out, and again I've so many beautiful examples of this where it's just trusting and surrendering and going, you know what, this isn't in my control. Something a bigger force that I can't necessarily identify has got different plans for me than what I can comprehend. And so ultimately that life, this manna, this big ultimate gift that has been provided to me, is here growing me up, my soul level evolution. It's learning us. Life, we think we're here, here I am in a teaching capacity, sharing, but ultimately it's life that's learning me, or me that's learning life, and I'm growing up. I'd rather say growing into my heart and soul level connection, as opposed to growing up, or even the idea of evolving, becoming bigger more. That's a very human construct. So just deepening my connection with myself, my heart and my soul. There's other ways that other vehicles that exist with enhancing our spiritual body relationship. I use the idea of connecting with the higher self, so a version of myself that is less identified with personality, with ego, with identity levels. It's like, right, here I am, I have this decision, or I have to do this thing. What does my higher self's perspective want for me out of this scenario? Can I bring that wisdom in that removes the small me perspective? The soul connection I've spoken to, the God within connection. So the opportunities that I have had to connect with the God within have been consequences due to large healing work that has happened. So again, that wasn't the intention of those healings. It wasn't like, right, I'm doing this healing so I can connect with my inner God, my God within, my God-like self. But that is consequently what happened as a result of those healings. So maybe we can, maybe we can't make that happen, that level of connection, but perhaps I can set an intention or pray for that experience, and then trust and surrender to that. Spirit. Okay, now I've got amazing friends and people in my circles who have very strong connections to spirit, in that it's like having a conversation with another person. It's that tangible, it's that real, that relationship is that deep, their experiences with that is not been my personal experience, so I don't and won't speak to that. I have my own experiences, give or take, in that space, but it's not something that I I derive, or yet have had a lot, as being a vehicle that has enhanced my spiritual body connection. Plant spirits, spirits of various locations, spirits of people past, spirits of our ancestors. Okay, again, various experiences that I've had with those, and again, some it's been intentional and I've made happen, and I've gone in with particular intentions of connecting with those, and others it's outside of the explainable or the realms of me being able to make it happen. It's just happened. Connecting with dreams and understanding, or being able to interpret the realms of our dreams to get those, the deeper healings or the deeper understandings of our unconscious mind. Also connecting with past lives. This has been a fun one for me. My original coaching studies that I commenced in 9 years ago, 2014, consisted of NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming, and timeline therapies. The version of that I was instructed in is matrix therapies, and that as part of those processes has the ability to connect in with past lives to explain some of the blockages, some of the limitations that we have in our systems, intellectual and otherwise, has enabled me to not only connect to my own past lives, but also support others connecting to theirs when I'm working with clients. And again, you can explain it away, and this is how I used to do it before being open to it, was explaining away that the brain sometimes likes to symbolically represent situations so that it can be healed and cleared and modified. These days I'm a lot more open to the possibility of past lives actually existing, just through experiencing it myself, but also seeing how it shows up for others. And I won't share those stories because they're other people's stories. So they're just some of the potential vehicles. It's certainly not the only vehicles. They're just some of the ones that I've sort of touched on, or had my own experiences, or have experiences of those that I've either worked with or people that I interact with quite closely who have shared their experiences with their own vehicles with connecting with the spiritual body. So I guess ultimately, all the work that I do, coaching, healing for myself and for others, ultimately is underpinned with the intention of bringing us back to a deeper connection to self. And as a result of that, because that's really what sort of commenced this journey ultimately for myself, what I inadvertently discovered is that this may also bring us closer to God, to the universe, to source, and that I guess is something that that I have to address, because that has been my experience. So the model that I'm creating, that the spiritual body is a portion of, is a model that I have created, reflecting the coaching and healing aspects that I have identified, and have been able to place into a bigger structure. And as I said, ultimately the goal is to bring us closer to ourselves, and has inadvertently, as I have discovered through my own journey, has brought me closer to my spiritual body, and an awareness and a comfortability in that space. Thanks for listening. This has been a big one for me in sharing, and no doubt for you in listening. So yours, enjoy and out. Until next time.